Welcome, dear brothers and sisters. Today, we want to share with you a fascinating story about one of Padre Pio's most mysterious gifts, which has just been revealed. It is an impressive case of bilocation, an extraordinary ability that this saint possessed. Padre Pio, as we know, was endowed with numerous spiritual gifts, among which his ability to communicate at a distance stood out. However, the gift of bilocation in particular is something that has always aroused great admiration and even amazement. Bilocation is the phenomenon whereby a person can be in two places at once. And there are documented records that, while Padre Pio remained in his convent in San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy, he was seen in other places carrying out specific missions. These accounts of bilocation are not just popular stories, but are part of the official records that contributed to the process of his canonization. Today, we want to share with you an extraordinary case that only came to light recently, in December 2024. This episode took place in St. Mary's Church, located in Pittsburgh in the United States, while Padre Pio remained physically in his convent in Italy. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen his figure marked by the stigmata, and the account gains even more credibility due to the characteristic perfume that exuded from his wounds. This aroma, described as a combination of roses, lilies, or even a slight hint of sweet tobacco, was known as one of the ways in which the saint made his presence felt. We'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any edifying content like this. Returning to Padre Pio, he also communicated with his spiritual children from a distance in other ways. In addition to the mystical scent of his stigmata, he had the gift of making his voice heard by people thousands of kilometers away. Many of his spiritual children, and even strangers, reported hearing his voice clearly, offering advice, encouragement, or even warnings. These episodes often occurred while they were asleep, but even so, the saint's words were clearly understood. This is just one example of the greatness of the gifts that God bestowed on Padre Pio, a saint who continues to touch the hearts of the faithful all over the world. What is most striking about the accounts of Padre Pio is undoubtedly his physical bilocation. There are testimonies from people in different parts of the world who claim to have seen the saint, even though he never left his convent in San Giovanni Rotondo. One of the most striking cases is that of a man lost in the Sahara Desert who was guided to safety by a mysterious stranger. It was later discovered that the man's mother had fervently asked for Padre Pio's intercession, and his unexplained presence in the desert was attributed to bilocation. In addition, Padre Pio has been sighted in surprising places, such as Hawaii and remote Siberia. Another curious report refers to several witnesses who claim to have seen him near the tomb of St. Pius X on at least 5 different occasions. During the beatification ceremony of St. Therese of the Child Jesus, a prelate who was in St. Peter's Basilica spotted Padre Pio. Moved by surprise and emotion, he tried to approach, but the saint disappeared before the meeting could take place. One of the most intriguing episodes involving Padre Pio's bilocation took place in front of Pope Pius XI. During a meeting in which a possible suspension of his clerical functions, requested by his opponents, was being discussed, something extraordinary happened. The door to the room where the Pope was sitting was unexpectedly opened, and a young Capuchin friar entered, his hands hidden in the sleeves of his habit, and with a slight limp in his step. He approached the Pope, knelt down, kissed his feet, and said, "Your Holiness, for the good of the Church, don't let this happen." After repeating the gesture of kissing the Pope's feet, the friar asked for his blessing and left the room the same way he had entered. What was most impressive was the testimony of the Swiss guards who were guarding the entrance. They said, perplexed, that no one had ever passed through there, not even a Capuchin friar. Another striking account came from Mother Esperanza, who worked at the Vatican. She claimed to have seen Padre Pio in Rome on several occasions, particularly in the Holy Office. According to her, he used to wear half gloves to hide the stigmata on his hands. Mother Esperanza not only saw him, but also greeted him, kissed his hand, and on a few occasions had small conversations with him, to which he always responded serenely. These stories, witnessed by different people around the world, reinforce the mystery and holiness of Padre Pio, highlighting his divine mission to help the faithful wherever they needed his help. One intriguing testimony involving Padre Pio, which only came to light in December 2024, dates back to the Second World War. During 1944 and 1945, American soldier Joe Paluzzo visited Padre Pio more than 45 times at his monastery in San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy. Joe's military unit was stationed about 60 kilometers from the convent, and he often took other soldiers with him to meet the saint. Padre Pio not only welcomed Joe, but also placed him under his special protection, regarding him as one of his spiritual sons. In addition, the saint promised that he would take all Americans as his spiritual children, provided they were good Catholics and received the sacraments frequently, a promise of a spiritual love that extended beyond physical borders. This special bond took on even more significance when a surprising case came to light, revealed publicly by Geraldine Grimes, Joe Paluzzo's niece, in December 2024. Geraldine recalled a remarkable event that happened on a cold day between 1954 and 1955, when she was still a child. She was accompanying her mother to morning mass at St. Mary's Church, located in Pittsburgh, United States, in order to pray for her deceased grandfather. However, when they arrived at the church, they found the doors inexplicably locked, frustrating the faithful who were there to pray. Despite several attempts, including repeated knocks on the rectory door, no one answered. It was then that something extraordinary happened. While the faithful were waiting outside, two men dressed in brown religious habits appeared, walking towards the church. One of them was a younger man, while the other, more mature in appearance, had gray hair and a beard. When they reached the church door, the bearded man turned to those present with a serious look on his face and asked, "Why are the church doors closed?" The two men then went around the side of the building and, shortly afterwards, opened the main door of the church, which was locked from the inside. The faithful, relieved, entered the church, but the local parish priest never appeared. To everyone's surprise, the traditional Latin Mass was celebrated by the mysterious bearded man who had opened the doors. This episode not only impressed those present, but also reinforced the mystery and spirituality of Padre Pio. The connection between this event and his bilocation is evident, and is yet another example of how this saint continued his mission to serve and protect the faithful, even at great distances. When it came time for Holy Communion at that extraordinary Mass, Geraldine, still a child and without having made her first communion, remained seated in her pew. Her mother, for her part, approached the altar rail, knelt down and received the blessed sacrament. On returning to the pew, Geraldine's mother leaned towards her daughter and, visibly moved, said, "The priest has holes in his hands like Jesus," and there was a strong, wonderful smell of flowers around him. Curiously, there were no flowers around the altar, which made the heavenly aroma even more intriguing. After the celebration of Mass, Geraldine and her mother decided to wait outside the sacristy to try to speak to the visiting priest. However, after some time of waiting, the church lights went out and, on checking, they discovered that the sacristy was empty. It was as if the two men who had appeared that morning had simply disappeared, leaving a deep mystery in the air. Sometime later, when they saw a photo of Padre Pio, Geraldine and her mother immediately recognized him as the priest with holes in his hands who had celebrated Massachusetts. When they mentioned this to the local parish priest, he confirmed that it must indeed have been Padre Pio himself who was there. This recognition was all the more moving given the extraordinary nature of everything that happened that day. Geraldine believes that the younger man who was accompanying Padre Pio, who was tall, thin, dark-haired, and remained silent the whole time, may have been none other than the saint's guardian angel. Years after this remarkable episode, the Church of Santa Maria, where the Mass took place, became the headquarters of a prayer group dedicated to the child Jesus and inspired by Padre Pio. Joe Paluzzo, who lived nearby and was one of the saint's spiritual children, was one of the founding members of this prayer group. However, due to structural problems, the Church of Santa Maria was demolished, and the prayer group was moved to the Church of San Bras, where Geraldine still actively participates. Joe Paluzzo, faithful to Padre Pio's promise to care for Americans as his spiritual children, lived a life of devotion until he passed away on January 12, 1996. His legacy, as well as the mysteries associated with Padre Pio, live on through the faith and testimonies of people like Geraldine, who experienced firsthand the divine grace that this saint brought to the world. This brings to a close our account of Padre Pio's extraordinary bilocation while celebrating Mass in Pittsburgh, an impressive testimony that was revealed publicly for the first time by an eyewitness. This story offers us yet another glimpse into the holiness and mystical gifts that marked the life of this great saint. Now we'd like to ask you, do you know of any other saints who also possess the gift of bilocation? Someone whose story has touched your faith or aroused your curiosity? We'd love to know your opinion and your memories of other saints who manifested extraordinary gifts like this. If you like what we've shared today, don't forget to like this video. Share it with your friends and family so that more people can learn about these stories that strengthen faith and inspire the soul. And, of course, leave us your comment on what you thought of the topic. Your interaction is very important to us.